As I said, we are in the second week of Sunday, second Sunday of the Lent. And as we are in the journey of our spiritual life towards the Easter, and also that's why in the readings we can hear in the first reading Abraham's call, going to the promised land, unknown journey. And also Jesus with his disciples, they are journeying towards Jerusalem, where Jesus is going to suffer, die, and on the third day is going to resurrect it. So it's a journey, and before we this journey, today's reading is inviting us to see the beauty, the glory that waits after the suffering. As we heard in the Gospel, on a high mountain, Peter, James, and John had a special experience with God's presence with Jesus. When they went on top of the mountain, they saw Jesus transfigured, glorified, bright, shining. And they were so happy to see that because they also wanted to be there. They sensed that the presence of Jesus and they were so delighted. It was an experience for them as God with them forever, Jesus as Emmanuel. And it was like a glimpse of heaven, such a bright, and they did not want to come down. And that's why Peter cried out to Jesus, "It is wonderful for us to be here." And when Peter requests Jesus to build 3 tents for Moses, for Elijah, and for Jesus. Because he liked it. He wanted to be spending more time, and he enjoyed the glimpse of heavenly glory. That's why Gospel today invites each one of us to recall those moments in our life too, where we have special graces that we have received. We too had a strong sense of God's presence in those moments in our life. The love of God, His presence, His consolation that we have also received in our life experiences, where we have been deeply touched that God is also present with us, like today, these 3 disciples with Jesus. So it might have been different experiences for you. Sometimes by just reading the scriptures passages, when you are having difficult time, just the one sentence or one word of the Bible can give you consolation, that where you find God's presence. Or sometimes during all the week, working hard, having different issues in your family lives, and on Sunday when you come for Mass, when you enter the church, you feel something different. You feel peace, you feel God's presence. And this is how God also is manifesting His presence in your life. Or sometimes it might be with your friends or your families or any other ways. You have received consolation, support, or any kind of inspiration or encouragement. And that's how God is present with you, as He was present with 3 disciples on that mountain. All of these experiences leave us feeling of more alive. When you have experienced this kind of consolation, we feel more alive. We feel more hopeful, and we are more willing to go ahead ourselves to continue to journey in our daily life. And this, we can say, somehow leaves us this kind of experiences of God's presence transfigured. As Jesus Himself was transfigured, we also feel changed, transfigured, or transformed in our life. The very often, this kind of experience we have, but we need to open to it. We need to open to our heart. Very often it comes, and it takes God's initiative. It is God's initiative. He wants to be present and manifest to us in different events. As Jesus took them off the mountain, they did not take Jesus off the mountain. It was Jesus Himself who took the apostles to the mountain. It was Jesus who took the initiative. As they flowed up the mountain, they were not expecting anything unusual to happen. Yet, they had this wonderful gift from God on this mountain. This glorious moment when the veil between heaven and earth, what was beyond us, it was unveiled. And they saw Jesus in a way they had never seen Him before. in all his glorious divinity. And all we can do is to hold ourselves always to open, to experience, to receive, or to feel this kind of experiences. Such gift from the Lord, they come always. They come to all of us, not frequently, but every now and then, when we are ready to see the God's presence in our life. Perhaps it is when we are not at our, when we are in our vulnerable time, that time when Lord blesses us. That was the case when Peter, James, and John, just before they were on the mountain, Jesus has spoken to his disciples for the first time about his coming suffering and death. And they all found it very difficult to accept what Jesus was saying to them, especially Peter. Even Peter is called at Jesus, "No, Lord, it should not happen to you. We want you to be king. It should not happen that you should not die." Even Peter is called at him. And in response, what did Jesus say? "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me." And you see, it is these disturbed and troubled disciples who do not want to face the suffering, do not want to carry the cross. And Jesus take the initiative to take them up the mountain to show the glory. It was a very dark moment, and the light of God shone upon Jesus, and through Jesus upon the disciples. It came the glory of God to Jesus and what the disciples saw them. In our own dark moments too, the Lord will often bring us these graces. He will manifest to us only when we are open to Him. When life is a struggle, it is good to be open to the ways that the Lord may want to bless us. He often takes the initiative, like today's, to give us a sense of God's loving presence, especially in those times when we experience darkness in our life or when we struggle. That Jesus wants to touch our lives every day with His gracious presence. In the Gospel reading, at a certain moment when the disciples were overcome by what they saw, they fell on their faces. They were overcome with fear. But Jesus, who loves them, came up and touched them, saying, "Stand up, do not be afraid." How the Lord was with His disciples on that mountain, and is how He is with all of us who are trying to be His disciples today. He touches our lives, calling on us today to stand strong and not to be afraid as we journey in our daily life. In the strength of this wonderful experience on the mountain, Jesus and His disciples were able to take the road to Jerusalem. As they are moving towards Jerusalem, now they are no longer afraid. They are ready to carry the cross. Even though suffering and death is waiting for them. The Lord, as I said, every day He comes to touch our lives so that we can also journey faithfully and hopefully like Abraham in the first reading. He set out, as Abraham set out on a journey in the strength of the Lord's presence and His blessings. Because God Himself said, "I will be with you." And God promised him to multiply his descendants and to promise him a son. That's why Abraham also found God's presence in his life, so he was able to go unknown country, the promised land where God has commanded him. So Lent is a season when we will stand back and allow the Lord to take us up to the mountain. It is a season when we invite the Lord to touch our lives in a ways that transfigure us, in a way that change our life, and that transform us fully into His own image, and leaves us saying, "It is wonderful for us to be here." So, my dear brothers and sisters, as we journey towards this Lenten time, the glorious moment is waiting. The glorious moments are waiting for each one of us for whatever life that we are living. But we need to believe that Jesus, who is accompanying us, is always with us with his blessings and graces. But we need to open to him and we need to believe in him like the disciples and like Abraham, so that we can also journey our daily life faithfully and hopefully to wait for the glorious moment that is waiting for each one of us. May this Eucharist bless each one of us, give us strength that we will from today we will be able to live our life faithfully and walk our journey faithfully to enjoy the glorious moment that waiting for each one of us.